Hello everyone, this is going to be a read aloud of a resource from the Prestwick House about 10 strategies for understanding Shakespeare. So I'm just going to be going through this PDF and reading it aloud for you because it is an excellent resource for understanding what he's saying when he's writing. There is the table of contents and a letter from this publisher, but I'm going to start on page 4, which is Tip 1, Read It Out Loud. Shakespeare's plays were designed for the stage, for real people to be speaking the words out loud at the pace of conversation. While we sometimes spend a couple of weeks studying or reading Shakespeare in the classroom, it was written to be spoken out loud over the course of a couple of hours. While you're reading out loud, remember to focus on punctuation to help with rhythm and intonation. Unless there is a mark of punctuation, such as a comma or period, don't stop at the end of a line. Shakespearean verse has a rhythm of its own, and once a reader gets used to it, the rhythm becomes very natural to speak in and read. If this is one of your first encounters with Shakespeare, you may find it helpful to include a short pause in your reading when you come to a comma and a long pause for a period, colon, semicolon, dash, or question mark. Here's an example from The Merchant of Venice, Act 4, Scene 1. The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. It is twice blessed. It blesseth him that gives, and him that takes. 'Tis mightiest in the mighties. It becomes the throned monarch better than his crown. Tip 2. Focus on punctuation to understand sentences. In addition to helping you read aloud, punctuation marks define units of thought. Try to understand each unit as you read, keeping in mind that periods, colons, semicolons, and question marks signal the end of a thought. Here's an example from The Taming of the Shrew, Act 1, Scene 1. Tranio, I saw her coral lips to move, and with her breath she did perfume the air. Sacred and sweet was all I saw in her. The first unit of thought is from Tranio to air. He saw her lips move, and her breath perfumed the air. The second thought, sacred and sweet, re-emphasizes the first. Tip 3. Reword inverted sentences. In modern English, most sentences begin with a noun or pronoun and end with a verbal phrase. The structure of the sentence is used as a marker to help the reader understand what's going on. Students reading Elizabethan English often find the inverted sentence particularly confusing when they encounter it for the first time. In an inverted sentence, the subject, verb, or other parts are not in their usual order. Some lines will be easier to understand if you put the subject first and reword the sentence. For example, look at the line below. Never was seen so black a day as this. Romeo and Juliet, Act 4, Scene 5. You can change its inverted pattern so that it is more easily understood. A day as black as this was never seen. Here are a few more examples. For the gracious Duncan have I murdered. Macbeth, Act 3, Scene 1. How like a fawning publican he looks. The Merchant of Venice, Act 1, Scene 3. Tip 4. Don't get tripped up by missing words. For metric or poetic reasons, Shakespeare would often omit or easily inferred words using a technique called ellipsis. An ellipsis occurs when a word or phrase is left out. In Romeo and Juliet, Benvolio asks Romeo's father and mother if they know the problem that is bothering their son. Romeo's father answers, I neither know it nor can learn of him. Romeo and Juliet, Act 1, Scene 1. This sentence can easily be understood to mean, I neither know the cause of it, nor can I learn about it from him. Tip 5. Keep track of the subject, verb, and object. Who did what to whom? Especially in longer speeches, it's occasionally difficult to keep track of the flow of the sentence, so it's helpful to step back and make sure you understand the very basic units of a sentence before you become distracted with parenthetical comments and long descriptions. In the clauses below, note the subject, verbs, and objects. The king hath happily received, Macbeth, the news of thy success. And when he reads thy personal venture in the rebels' fight, Macbeth, Act 1, Scene 3. First clause, the king hath happily received, Macbeth, the news of thy success. Subject, the king, verb, has received, and the object is the news of Macbeth's success. Second clause, and when he reads thy personal venture in the rebels' fight, subject, he, the king, verb, reads, object, about your venture. Tip 5, keep track of the subject, verb, and object, who, did what, to whom, continued. In addition to following the subject, verb, and object of a clause, you also need to track pronoun references. In the following soliloquy, Romeo, who is madly in love with Juliet, secretly observes her as she steps out on her balcony. To help you keep track of the pronoun references, we've made margin notes. Note that the feminine pronoun sometimes refers to Juliet, but sometimes does not. But soft, what light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon, who is already sick and pale with grief, that thou, her maid, art more fair than she. Here, who refers to the moon. Thou, her maid, refers to Juliet, the sun. She and her refer to the moon. In tracking the line of action in a passage, it is useful to identify the main thoughts that are being expressed and paraphrase them. Tip 6. Keep your eyes open for metaphors. Shakespeare frequently uses metaphor to illustrate an idea in a unique way. Pay careful attention to the two dissimilar objects or ideas being compared. In Macbeth, Duncan, the king, says, I've begun to plant thee, and will labor to make thee full of growing. Macbeth, Act 1, Scene 5. The king compares Macbeth to a tree he can plant and watch grow. Other examples. The morn, in russet mantle clad, walks o'er the dew of some high eastern hill. Hamlet, Act 1, Scene 1. Memory, the warder of the brain, shall be a fume. Macbeth, Act 1, Scene 7. Love is a smoke made with the fume of sighs. Romeo and Juliet, Act 1, Scene 1. Tip 7. Take a moment to understand allusions. An allusion is a reference to some event, person, place, or artistic work not directly explained or discussed by the writer. It relies on the reader's familiarity with the item referred to. Allusion is a quick way of conveying information or presenting an image. In the following lines, Romeo alludes to Diana, goddess of the hunt and of chastity, and to Cupid's arrow, love. Well, in that hit you miss, shall not be hit with Cupid's arrow. She hath Dian's wit, and in strong proof of chastity well armed. When you come across an unfamiliar allusion, take a moment to look it up online in the footnotes or in a reference book. You often find that just understanding a small amount of background material will add a lot of richness to your reading of the play. Tip 8. Those strange words with apostrophes are usually simple contractions. When you come across an odd-looking contraction, know that they're generally simple contractions with only a letter or two left out. Once you learn to recognize them, they're very easy to read. Contracted words are words in which a letter has been left out. Some that frequently appear: bet, aunt, with, dote, t, against, tain, tis, in, twill, bout, knowest, ne'er, and or. Tip 9. Look up difficult words. While many words can be understood in the context of what's being said, some words are just difficult to understand for the modern reader because they're no longer in common use, or the meaning has changed. In those cases, a quick look at a dictionary or the sidebar notes in a well-annotated edition, such as Literary Touchstone Classics editions, will help reveal the meaning. Archaic words. Some archaic words like thee, thou, thy, and thine are instantly understandable, while others, like betwixt, cause a momentary pause. Obsolete words. If it were not for the notes in a Shakespeare text, obsolete words could be a problem. Words like beteem are usually not found in student dictionaries. In these situations, however, a quick glance at the book's notes will solve the problem. Familiar words with unfamiliar definitions. Another problem in those familiar words whose definitions have changed. Because readers think they know the word, they do not check the notes. For example, in this comment from Much Ado About Nothing, Act 1, Scene 1, the word an means if. Scratching could not make it worse, and 'twere such a face as yours were. Tip 10, remember that Shakespeare was having fun with the language. Shakespeare wasn't writing in order to confuse students 400 years in the future. He was writing to entertain, to make the audience laugh and cry. Once you're used to the language, you'll find that many scenes are hilarious. Keep your eyes out for the following types of verbal jokes. A pun is a literary device that achieves humor or emphasis by playing on ambiguities. Two distinct meanings are suggested either by the same word or by two similar sounding words. Now is the winter of our discontent, made glorious summer by the son of York. Richard III, Act 1, Scene 1. In this quote, Shakespeare is punning the sun, which drives away winter with sun, the descendant of the House of York. A double entendre is a kind of pun in which a word or phrase has a second, usually sexual, meaning. Lady Capulet. So shall you share all that he doth possess by having him, making yourself no less. No less? Nay, bigger. Women grow by men. Romeo and Juliet, Act 1, Scene 3. In this scene, the nurse is joking that women become pregnant by men. A malapropism occurs when a character mistakenly uses a word that he or she has confused with another word. In Romeo and Juliet, the nurse tells Romeo that she needs to have a confidence with him when she should have said conference. Mockingly, Benvolio then says she probably will indict rather than invite Romeo to dinner.